Good morning. Welcome to OPCC. Welcome to those of you joining online. We're glad you're here today. If you have your Bibles, turn to Matthew chapter 26. We'll begin our study in verse 17. It's been an incredible weekend. I'm excited to see all these young people following the Lord in baptism. We had a wedding from the church, from our children's ministry department. Ashley Fields is on staff here at church and married Ryan Butler, and that was amazing. Man, the Lord is moving among these young people. They're getting married right and left. Yeah, it's amazing. I told Pat we were at the wedding, and the bride and groom, Ryan and Ashley, were having their first dance, and I told Pat, I said, boy, it doesn't take very long to get from there to here, like where we're at. I remember when Abby and I, it just seemed like yesterday we got married, and then, it's like, bam, they got kids, and bam, I think Jonah, has turned 20, how old are you? 23 today. Hey, man, you got 5, you don't try to keep up with all that. It's too much. Jonah, happy birthday to you, son. I'm proud of you. And I was just thinking about you, and before I came up, and so Jonah's number 2 in line in the birth of our 5 kids. Joel is first, and so I just need to be transparent here with you guys today. I did not want any daughters. I was terrified of having girls. And it wasn't because I don't like girls. I do. I don't like boys. That's why I didn't want any girls. I did not want to think about that, right? And so when Jonah was born, when it happened, like I said, it just came out, I said, it's a girl. And the doctor looked down and said, it's a boy. And I said, oh, it's a boy, right? And I was like, oh, Lord, thank you, right? And so only reason I tell that story, okay, no, let me say this lest I forget. Then I had faith. And then I got a girl. And I was like, oh, geez, I'd trade 3 boys for a girl any day of the week. So anyway, I got both now. So anyway, what I want to say about the story is, Jonah, you came into the world, and the first thing I felt because of that was relief. And you've proven that that's the way you make people feel. When I'm working around the house or whatever, when I see you, I feel relief. And you remind me of my father. I think you got a lot of his personality. And I just felt led of the Lord that I'm supposed to tell you that and encourage you in the Lord because it's your birthday. And so thank you for that. And boy, I'm at a mess now, and we got a long ways to go. So anyway, happy birthday, Jonah. And let's get into our text today. I don't know about you, but I think we have this in common. You get something and it needs to be assembled, and you look at the picture and you're like, yeah, I got this, no problem. And you start putting this thing together. And then you get about halfway through, and you realize what you thought went on last needed a part that goes on first before it will actually fit on what at this particular time, and you missed it. So then you go back and you have to start looking at the instructions, and you end up taking what you thought was several steps forward. You really end up taking 1 step, 2 steps forward, and 3 or 4 back, because you have to disassemble everything you did, and it takes a lot longer. Now, when you get a little older, as I have, you learn to humble yourself before the instructions. All right? The first thing I do now, I don't care what I buy, is I look at the instructions, and I'm mad if they're not very good. I read them a couple of times, lay everything out, and get it really down to where I know, and then I start assembling. So I've humbled myself enough now to know I need the instructions. I don't want to rely on them picture, and it's a much more rewarding experience when it just all goes together smoothly the first time. And I tell you that story because following the Lord is a lot like that. God wants us to do things, and we feel the tug from the Lord. We feel him calling us in to something, and we really want the big picture. Like, we want to see it, and before we say yes. And the reality is, in my experience of following the Lord, he never gives us the big picture. He only gives us a step. And you won't even know what step 5, 6, and 7 are until you do steps 1 through 4. And so they just come sequentially in this order. And when we look at our text today, that is exactly what takes place in this Passover celebration. And Passover pointed back to God's deliverance of the nation of Israel out of their slavery from Egypt. They were in bondage to Egypt. Egypt had enslaved them, and God rescues them. If you know very much about the Bible, you know the story of Moses, that God raised Moses up, and he used Moses to lead the children of Israel out of the bondage of Egypt. And there were plagues and miracles that surrounded that whole experience. And the last one, the most severe one, was the plague of death. The angel of death would come over this region. And when he came over this region, the firstborn of every family, every animal, all of your stock, your pets, the firstborn would die. Unless you followed these instructions that were given by God. And that was that a lamb had to be slain. There were instructions about eating it together with your family in your home and taking the blood and putting it over the door of your home. And as everybody walked into the home, they passed under the blood and they observed this Passover. And upon that final miracle, the Pharaoh finally let the people of Israel go as Moses had been asking. He saw God's hand in it. Again, he changes his mind, and but he lets them go, and they're released. And so it is a reminder of how God passed over their home, because in faith they did what God asked them to do, and no one in their family, none of their firstborn, none of their livestock died, because they walked out their faith in obedience to the Lord. So for thousands of years, the Jews have celebrated the Passover. Many Jews, even to this day, still celebrate the Passover because they did not recognize Jesus as the Messiah. And so we look at this, and it is a very important time. And Jesus had celebrated the Passover with his disciples before. This is year 3 of their ministry, or his ministry, and their time together. And so they had 2 observances of Passover already. And so they were expecting to have another Passover with Jesus, which they were going to do. But this Passover would be different. And Jesus eagerly, it says in Luke 22, verse 15, Jesus said, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." Now, why did Jesus eagerly desire to eat this Passover with them? Because Jesus instituted this Passover thousands of years before. And in this night, Jesus would transition the Passover into something new. It would be completely different. And it would be the last time that Jesus would give the instructions, God would give the instructions to observe the Passover in this form. He will not participate in it again until he returns to the planet. And so he will not do this again. This is the last time he does it. And it will not be done again until all of the people of God sit down at the great marriage supper of the Lamb after the return of Christ to the planet. Jesus will come back to planet Earth. And when he comes back to planet Earth, he will observe this moment once again with all believers throughout all time, both previously, before Christ in the Old Testament, those who walked in faith, and those after Christ in the New Testament, which would include us as believers. So this is a fascinating moment in time where things transition from the shadow of the Exodus into the reality of the New Covenant. And to get there, the disciples, as he transitions them, they can't just look at the big picture. They got to follow steps. And so as we unpack this is the way I'm going to do it today, is I'm going to get in our text here in a moment. But the Lord's Supper in this night is unique because it is told in all four Gospels. And not all four Gospels say the same thing. They don't contradict one another, but they fill in more of the detail. So some of the things that happen in this experience are not in our text today, but they are either in Mark, Luke, or John. And so as we dive in, what I want to do is take you back in time and help you to get an understanding of the perspective of the disciples. Because we look back in hindsight and we see the whole big picture. They didn't see the big picture. They didn't even realize that Jesus was going to be crucified in a few hours. They didn't think Jesus was going to die. Remember, Jesus had told them over and over, and they admit in the disciples, when he said this, we didn't get it. We didn't really know what he was talking about. And it wasn't until after the resurrection that they were able to put it all together and see all of these things, what Jesus was communicating to them. They didn't realize how forthright he was in the moment. And so as we're walking with them, what we know, we learned last week, a lot of people are getting mad. The high priest and the elders were mad because of what Jesus was doing. They didn't like what he was doing. He was upsetting everything and changing things. He had authority. He was shifting the balance. He was clearing out the temple. He was calling them hypocrites. They didn't like what he was doing. Judas didn't like what he was not doing. Judas was like, you need to be doing more. You need to be doing more politically and getting involved and overthrowing Rome and leading this rebellion. The people are ripe and ready. You're not being who we want you to be, Jesus. So you got one group that's upset with what Jesus is doing, another group upset with what Jesus is not doing. They're mad about that. And then, of course, we landed on Mary. She's just mad about Jesus, all right? She just loved Jesus, was mad about him. And we found ourselves looking at, well, hey, man, what this is teaching us is that Jesus is mad about us. He's mad enough about us to go to the cross and die in our stead. And so all these people are mad. And it's Passover week. And Passover week is a big deal, man. Like going on for thousands of years. It was like the Christmas of their day. Like everything, if you think about it, like Christmas is the major holiday for us. Even whether you're a believer or non-believer, everything's about Christmas, man. We're leading up. We're going to come together and go home for Christmas. We're going to be with our family. Family members come together. It is a really important time that has a lot of tradition around it. Well, for the Jews, in order to observe Passover, you had to go back to the city. You couldn't observe Passover outside of the city. You had to be inside city limits to observe Passover. That was one of the requirements. So they would make a pilgrimage, and they would make this pilgrimage once a year, and they would come in, and with different families, 10 to 15 people, they would all go through this experience of eating this meal together. And so the city was full, okay? It's full of people. Jesus has got some people that want to arrest and kill him. And so there's a little concern for his life. He knows the betrayer has already betrayed because he's sovereign. So he's needing a place to meet. The disciples know there needs to be a place to meet. And all the Airbnbs are full. Can't find one. It's kind of like when Joseph and Mary had to travel and they couldn't find a room. It's worse than that. Like the city is filled. And Jesus doesn't have a home himself, and so they need a place that they can observe this meal that takes quite a bit of time and quite a bit of preparation. And so they're talking amongst themselves, and they ask Jesus, where do you want us to make preparation for the Passover meal? And Jesus says, well, what I'd like for you, Peter and John, to go into the city. And when you get into the city, I want you to look for a man. The man will be carrying a water pot. When you see the man carrying the water pot, I want you to follow him. Follow him for as long as it takes. When you see him go in the house, and you know that he's in the house, I want you to go to the house. I want you to knock on the door. I want you to talk to the owner of the house. When the owner of the house comes out, I want you to tell him, the master's time is now, and he needs the room. And you'll go and you'll find a room. That's what I want you to do. All right. I guess that's what me and Peter will do, or me and Peter and John, they'll do. The other 10, they're not told anything. I guess they hang with Jesus. We don't know exactly what they do, but they aren't told where this location is. They will be told later. So there are 2 that go on this journey. Jesus asked them to go in this capacity. Now, this is very important to see how he's telling them to do it, because he didn't tell them exactly where to go. He told them how to go. So they do, and they make all the preparations. Now, when they finally locate the room, they're not done. You'll notice that the text, it says, then they prepared for the Passover. So everything wasn't prepared when they got there, just the furnishings were there. Everything they needed to prepare was there. The room was there. Every family was required to get a lamb. To observe the Passover, you had to have the lamb that was without blemish about 4 days early. The lamb would live in the house with you. Like the lamb wouldn't live away from you, he would be with you. I don't know where they had this lamb. That part of the text we don't know, but there had to be a lamb. And the lamb usually was with you and you cared for it. So if you were observing Passover, you would go as a father, get the lamb, or you would raise the lamb. The lamb would have been inspected already by the priest. He would have approved this lamb is without blemish. It can be sacrificed. Then it would live with you inside of your home for 4 days so that you got really close to it. Not a sheep, a little baby lamb. Cute little fuzzy thing. A lap lamb, right? It's a little lamb. And so the kids would love it and everything. And then when it was time, once Peter and John were ready, they had to take this little lamb to the temple. When they got to the temple, there was a need of 250-something thousand lambs in this period of time that needed to be sacrificed. I always wonder, how in the world did they do that? How did they do that? And they had to do it in a certain window of time, just a few hours that they had to do this. And there's some, I can get into the timing of it because there's some different opinions about that, but it doesn't matter. Even if you take Thursday evening and Friday evening, again, I don't want to confuse you, but just a few hours. And so what they would do is they had hundreds of priests, and the men would come and they would form lines behind every priest. And the priest would be standing up at the head of the line, and his job was to cut the lamb's throat, and there was a bowl of some sort that would catch the blood. And so every person, Peter and John, had to stand in line holding this lamb that was full of life, waiting for their time to come up. And when it came up, the priest would look at the lamb would be there while they were holding it, and they would cut its throat. It would bleed somewhat in the bowl, and the next person would step aside. When the bowl was filled, the bowl would be passed up the line and dumped on the altar. There was so much blood that they had an aqueduct system that carried it away from the temple through pipes, and it traveled down the edge into a brook that was nearby. Then they had to take that lamb that they had just sacrificed, go over to another place at the temple, hang it up, skin it, take its entrails and the fatty parts, put it in a place where it would be burned on the altar. And then they would wrap it up, take it back to the house, and begin cooking. They would cook the lamb throughout the rest of the day. They would make a paste of herbs that were bitter and sweet. And they would make this paste. It was a very thick paste, and it had both this bitterness and sweetness to it, and it was to remind them of when they were in slavery. They were to be reminded of when they had to use the clay to make the bricks, and how bitter it was, and how sweet it was when the Lord brought them out and delivered them. And they would have unleavened bread that they would share at this meal, and there would be 4 glasses of wine that would be drank throughout the evening. And the father would tell different stories. And the way the whole thing started was one of the youngest members of the family would ask the question, "Father, what does all this mean?" And he would begin explaining all of the history that happened and how God delivered the children of Israel out of the bondage of slavery so long ago. And they would take through and they would drink the wine and they would eat the bread and they would sing hymns and they would pray, and they would do this throughout the evening until all of the meat was consumed, all the way down to the last piece. They even had a deal where they would hide the last piece of meat eaten, and the kids would play a game trying to find it. And when they found it, the father would consume the last piece of meat, and it would conclude the Passover feast. This is how much detail went in to what they would do. And so in this moment, they are getting prepared for that. And Peter and John are talking and preparing all of this stuff. And then a little later, In the evening, at whatever time Jesus deemed the appropriate time, he brings the other 10. They follow him to the room. They get into the room, and then it has to be decided, where's everyone going to sit? And we know that ultimately, John sat at Jesus' right. One of the Gospels reveals that to us. And Judas was on Jesus' left. But there was an argument that broke out, which they had been arguing all the way up. We learned this all the way up for this last part of Jesus' ministry. They're arguing about which one of them is the greatest. And they get into an argument on this very night where they're supposed to be observing this time where God delivered them as the children of Israel. And as they're arguing about this, Jesus gets up from the table, takes off his outer robe, his robe of honor, lays it aside, grabs a towel, wraps it around him, gets a water basin ready, and they recognize he's going to wash their feet. So he teaches them an object lesson, showing them how much he loves them, and teaches them that my kingdom is about serving people, not trying to take the best place for yourself. Peter says, oh, no, Lord, I'd never let you wash my feet. He says, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me. Wash my head and my hands too. No, Peter, I don't need to wash your whole body. He who has had a bath needs to be bathed again. You just need your feet clean because you got dust between going from there to here. And so he says, all of you are clean except one. And he tells them one of them is not clean. And they're sitting at the table, and as they're eating, he says to them, one of you will betray me. Not somebody out there, not the high priest, not one of my disciples, but one of you 12 that I chose 3 years ago will betray me. And each of them, oh, Lord, is it me? Even Judas, is it me? Every one of them. Jesus says it'd be better if that person had never been born than to have betrayed me, but it is the one who will dip his hand in the bowl with me. And we're like, we all did that. Which one is it? They don't know. The only people that know in the room are Jesus, John, and Judas. Nobody else knows. Then Jesus takes the bread. He does something new and gives it to them and shifts the whole process of what's happening. After he does that, then they sing a hymn. And they go out of the city proper, up on the Mount of Olives, where we find him in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the betrayal takes place. Now, as we get in our text, I want you to understand the whole picture, and I want you to be there in that moment with him. Because the reality is, every single one of you needs to have an upper room experience. Every person, every human being will have an upper room experience. Now we look and we see that on the first day of the festival, it says in verse 17, a festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover? He replied, go into the city to a certain man, tell him, the teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house. So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. First thing I want you to learn about from this text is setting up the room requires stepping into obedience. If you're going to set up the room properly, you must step into obedience with the Lord. It's normal for disciples to ask Jesus what he wants them to do. Everybody wants them to know, where should I go to school? What career should I have? Lord, where do you want me to live? We want to know all these big things. Who should I marry? Where should I go to college? Where should I work? Should I take this job? Should I buy this car? These are all great questions. And the disciple of Christ ought to be asking them. Where do you want us to settle as a family and settle our family as a church? What do you want us to do, Lord? All of these things, Lord should be answering all of this stuff for us and giving us guidance. He desires to. But the reality is, notice that Jesus does not give them a location. He doesn't say, go to 14759 Benson Street, and there you will find where Jimmy Holbrook lives, and he's already got a room ready. I set up, made reservations on the Airbnb app myself. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say that at all. What does he say? Hey, you two go to the city. When you get there, look for a man carrying a water jar. Follow the man. When he goes into a home, go talk to the homeowner. This is the way I find that a lot of people in the kingdom want to function. Jesus tells them to do something. So, well, what if we go to the city right now? The city's full of people. What if we miss the man? What if the man has already gone by? What if we don't see him? What if there are two men carrying a water pot? Just go to the city, man. Just go. Look for the man. If the Lord tells you he'll be there, and you'll know when he's there. Well, what if we start following him? What if he sees us? What if he thinks we're going to hurt him? What if he turns us over to the authorities? What if we get arrested? We won't even get to go to Passover. Just follow the man. Just follow him. What if it's the wrong house? What if we pick the wrong guy? What if the owner doesn't like us? What if he said, I told Jesus he could use it, but I don't even know who you are. Get out of here. Just ask the man. You see how we function? Like Jesus gives it to them. He said, go to the city, look for the man, follow him home, tell the owner. He gives them a sequential plan. And as they do it, they get all the information. They did not get all of the intel up front. The revelation was given to them as they walked out their obedience. You will never answer these big questions in your life about what you're supposed to do, because God doesn't answer with big questions like that. Even when he asks you to do something big, he doesn't tell you how he's going to do it. He just wants you to walk out obedience one step at a time and be faithful, and he will do it as you go. And that's what you're expected to do. So some, like these young people, man, I'm so proud of them. What is the step of obedience after you meet the Lord? Get baptized. Some of you are still saying, well, you don't really have to get baptized. The thief on the cross wasn't baptized. I don't know if I need to be baptized. Not everybody believes you need to be baptized. Baptism happens here. What does Jesus want you to do, man? If you've never been baptized, get in the water. I don't like to tell my testimony. Who cares? You're not Lord. Get in the water, tell your testimony. You never know how the Lord might use it. If these guys hadn't listened, they never would have prepared the Passover that changes fundamentally everything. Here they are walking this out. They didn't get it all up front. Finding the room was just the beginning. Then they had to go shed the blood of the animal, roast it. They had to get it ready. Man, like we're doing all the work. I wonder what all the other guys are doing. I wish we could have stayed with them. Man, I've cooked these Passover meals. It's hard to cook for this many people, man. Come on. I want to be over there with those guys. They cook, they prepare the meal. They take the sacrifice. They take the lamb. They skin it. It goes from life to death. The blood is all over them. The blood is everywhere from all these lambs. They leave the temple. They bring it home. They prepare the fire. They roast the meal. They prepare the paste. They're preparing this lamb and setting the table all along, not realizing it's for the Lamb of God that will take away the sin of the world. It's one of the highest honors they ever could have received. It all started with, go to the city. Once you get to the city, look for the man. Once you find the man, follow him. Once he goes in, ask the owner. Didn't make all the preparations. They did it, and here we are talking about them. God expects us to follow his steps, even when it doesn't make sense. To get your upper room experience, you must be willing to step into obedience in the dark. The Lord is never going to work it all out for you. Do you think that when I started following and obeying Jesus that I knew I was going to move from Oklahoma to Kansas City and raise my family here? I had no idea. Matter of fact, I didn't know that even after the Lord, he helped us and called us to plant a church. I didn't even know I was going to be the pastor of the church, that I became the pastor of the church there. I thought pastors were weird. I'm never going to be a pastor. I'll be a youth pastor, not a pastor. I stepped into my obedience as a youth pastor and discovered that, this is what the Lord wants me to do. And so every time I've stepped into my obedience, the Lord just showed me what to do. It's in walking that he shows me and stepping into each area of obedience. Some of you are like, well, I don't even know, what does he want me to do? I don't even know how much I understand. I'm going to tell you what he wants you to do. Come to church next week. Now, why do I need to go to church? Because I'm going to be teaching you something else that you probably will pick up a next step that you need to know in order to walk out your obedience and help you to grow in your relationship with the Lord. That's why we come together. We don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together, because when we come together, we encourage one another in fellowship. We inspire one another to serve. We help each other in our testimony, learn the next steps. Well, why do we need each other? Because we are the body of Christ. And physically, the body of Christ is only manifest itself when it comes together with two or more gathered gather together in my name, there I will be in the midst of you also, helping you deal with your conflict, helping you deal with your joys, helping you navigate through your sorrows, helping you to understand what is the next step in your life. And people, I don't need church. Well, Jesus said you did. You don't care very much about what Jesus thought if you think you don't need church. Trust that he's preparing something special for you and just take the next step. He's not going to ask you to do something massive until you're willing to do something mini. And some people won't ever do anything mini because they're afraid that he will ask you to do something massive. It's never massive. And he never asks you to do something that you don't want to do. Like you may feel like you don't want to do it, but once you get there, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was struggling with this decision. This is the most incredible thing I ever could have done. Like I'm having a blast. Like right now, you told me 20 years ago that I would end up in Kansas City. I was like, man, you are crazy. I am a Sooner for life. If you told me today that I would have to move back to that red dirt, I would say, you're crazy, I'm going nowhere. Now that's an Oklahoma boy that's had a shift. Why? Because I fell in love as I listened to the Lord and took the steps that he asked me to take, not knowing all along what would happen to me, that all of you would be here. And I said, watch this guy baptize all these people, man. I need to sit a front row seat of watching the Lord do in my life what he said he would do. And I didn't even have to do it. Somebody else got married Friday. I didn't even have to do the ceremony. A staff member did the ceremony. I'm just there, man. And the congregation trying to get me to dance. What in the world, man? Blessed of the Lord I am. They're expecting this, they're walking in this, walking in obedience, and they're seeing all of these things revealed. And they're expecting this familiar celebration of freedom. They know this experience. They know the music, they know the menu, they know the message. They've done it several times. They're thinking about, I remember that first time we did it with Jesus, it was amazing. I didn't think he'd get any better. Then number 2, man, he elevated Passover. I can't wait for Passover tonight. It's going to be so good. It's our third one with Jesus. When evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me. They were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, surely you don't mean me, Lord. And Jesus replied, the one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me, and the Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to the man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born. Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, surely you don't mean me, Rabbi. And Jesus answered, you said so. Like he doesn't answer anybody. That doesn't mean any more than he says the one who dipped it in there. They didn't know. Jesus brings shock and awe into the upper room. When you're willing to step in there, this is what it'll be like. Your upper room experience will be filled with shock and awe. Jesus drops a bomb on the atmosphere. This is the one he was eager to eat with them. And he says, one of you will betray me. He wasn't scaring them, he was preparing them. He was taking them through the process of discipleship, discipling them for the future. During this Passover, when these bitter herbs were eaten to remind them of the bitterness of slavery, the Israelites were first welcomed into Egypt because of a guy named Joseph, who was a member of a family that God made a promise to, that was connected to the original promise to Abraham. The guy's name was Jacob. He had 12 sons. 11 of the sons sold one of the sons into slavery and ends up in Egypt. Egypt, while in prison, he is able to interpret some people's dreams that have connections with the king. They get out of prison. They tell the king about him because the king Pharaoh has had some dreams that he doesn't understand and none of his wise men can interpret. They tell him about Joseph, who's just been taking one step at a time, following the Lord. And the plan is being unpacked in his life. Next thing you know, Joseph is getting cleaned up, shaving his beard, going before the king, interpreting a dream. The king recognizes that he nails the dream, puts him in command of Egypt. He goes from prison to a prince, just like that. Boom. Now he's leading the show. Egypt is not a superpower at this point. But because a famine was coming and Joseph understood all of it because God laid it upon his heart and revealed it to him, then Joseph was able to prepare and build up a stockpile, and Egypt became a superpower under Joseph's leadership, became wealthy. But by the time 400 years passes, it says that there was a Pharaoh that knew not Joseph. He forgot about him. And he took the Israelites, because now they had moved from a family of 70 over these 4 centuries to a family of millions, and they were his slave labor. And all the money that was made because of the leadership of that Jew that was first in command by that first Pharaoh was being used to build all of the incredible things that we still are fascinated by in this last Pharaoh, using these people as slaves. What do we see? Generations passed, and they forgot Joseph and enslaved God's people. The bitterness of slavery was rooted in the betrayal of the one who saved them. Judas is sitting at the table the same way, about to betray Jesus. Jesus nails it, tells him, he draws a line in the sand. And 11 of them are troubled, they're saddened. They say, Lord, is it me? Did I say something stupid in the market? Did I say, look, is it me, Lord? All 11 of them. They're broken and realize they easily could have done it or might do it. And Judas says, is it me, Rabbi? Notice Judas doesn't call him Lord. There's a line in the sand. 11 of them saw him as Lord, and 1 of them saw him as a good teacher. In your upper room experience, Jesus will bring the shock and awe of conviction in your life and show you that you are the one. And in that moment, you either recognize that you have betrayed him as a sinner, or you think he's a good teacher and you're really not that bad. But when you recognize you have betrayed him, then something shifts in your life, in your upper room experience. You answer the question, is he Rabbi? Is he teacher? Or is he Lord? This is where he has them in this moment. Now everyone is reflecting. Judas ends up departing. They don't know why he leaves. They think that Jesus sent him on an errand to go, well, either give some money to poor people or buy some more stuff. They don't know. Only John knows. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat, this is my body. Then he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it with you in my Father's kingdom. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out of the Mount of Olives. Here's the last takeaway. Jesus will blow your mind if you give him a moment in the upper room. The Passover was incredibly familiar and highly scripted. Thousands of years of history. As I said, they knew the music, they knew the message, they knew the menu. But right in the middle of all that familiarity, Jesus implements a new covenant. And he is fulfilling Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31. Listen to what God wrote through the prophet Jeremiah well before Jesus was born. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. The covenant is being shifted to being written on stone to written on your heart. He's taking the heart of stone and making it a heart of flesh. He's giving us the mind of Christ. Something is happening in this moment when Jesus is implementing the Passover that has been observed for thousands of years. They have been observing it. And all of a sudden, Jesus interrupts it and says, look at this bread. This is my body. Look at this wine. This is my blood that is poured out for the remission of the sins of many. Jesus is pouring out new wine that won't fit into the old wine sacks of the Exodus. Something is happening in the world. Things are shifting from the physical to the spiritual. There is a transformation in the approachableness of God. The ultimate goal of your upper room experience is the mind-blowing realization of God's grace being available to you. You are a betrayer, but you can be forgiven for your betrayal. You are a sinner, but you can be saved by grace. And it's a call from the Lord. He's saying to us, cease your sacrifice and receive my grace. Quit striving with the lamb. You don't have to do it on your own anymore because I am the lamb. And I will give you the instructions step by step if you'll just walk with me and listen to me. The big idea is, have you sat down in the upper room with Jesus? Have you taken your seat at the table? He calls you to examine your heart, declare his lordship, receive his mind-blowing grace. The table is set. The covenant has been sealed. Will you step into obedience and have a moment with Jesus at his table? And let him blow your mind with grace. It's the most incredible experience a human can have. And when Jesus comes calling, sit down at the table and listen. Just listen. Because he says, I've done this one time on the planet to offer myself. And when I come back, I'm going to have a big banquet. And everybody who sat down in the upper room with me and recognized I was Lord will be at that banquet. And everybody who just thought I was a teacher, it would be better if they had never been born. Jesus, we thank you for your table. We're overwhelmed by your grace. We're challenged by your word and encouraged to walk out our obedience one step at a time, knowing that you are good and have prepared a place for us. Every head bowed, every eye closed, no one looking around. Like I can't do the upper room experience for you. All I can do is teach you about it. And so I have. It's your free will to sit down with Jesus and receive his grace. And there are pastors up here at the front to pray with you, including myself. You don't need us, because you have to sit down with Jesus yourself. And I can tell you, if you do today, your first step of obedience, I already know what it is. Confess with your mouth that you have received Christ as Lord and Savior. That's the first act of obedience Jesus wants you to take. Tell somebody you gave your life to Jesus in the upper room today. Now, we're here to pray with you and want to invite you to do it. But you're the one who has to decide to sit down with him.